Hello and welcome to my video. Please do like and subscribe if you aren't already. And this week we are, if you're watching this, as you get a reminder that this has been released, if you're watching it as it's just been released, I should say, then we are just a few weeks away from my joint exhibition at Gallery Oldham called Landscape Inside Out. So things are hotting up. Been a busy week, lots of things going on, lots of things to juggle, lots of tech nightmares as usual. Been visiting the gallery, more jiggling around how things get laid out. And if you're following me on my other social media platforms, especially things like Instagram or Twitter, you will have seen that I've been talking about my Constantina Sketchbooks, and I have them here today. And what I thought I would do is to not give the game away completely and take you on a complete run through, but just to share with you the sentiments of these sketchbooks. And I've put them out, as you can see, on the table, and they do make some lovely patterns, and it is quite nice to see them all laid out. So if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that the Landscape Inside Out exhibition is all about this body of work I've been doing about the local landscapes. So that's the moors, the woods and the valleys between. And so each of the types of landscape I was focusing upon and looking at and exploring in my paintings and work, I went out into the landscape. As you know, I do a lot of work on location, did all sorts of things. And one of the things I did was these Constantina sketchbooks. And there are 6 of them, 2 of moors, winter moors and summer moors, 2 of woodland, spring and autumn woodland, and then Edgelands and the Panoramic View. So 6 altogether, of which 4 of them were done with collage and ink as a pre-work before I went out and worked over the top of that on location. And the 2 about moors are more just mixed media on location using the Constantina. So what I thought I'd do is to just give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour. They will be on display as part of my sketchbook approach that is going to be shared as part of the exhibition. But I just wanted you to see, if you bear in mind, and I shall post in the details to the video, several of these sketchbooks, I showed you how I developed them. And so you will be familiar with the Edgelands one. I think I took you through the whole process of development of that booklet or that Constantina, and also the Autumn Woods. And a couple of the others I kind of dipped into and shared some elements of them. But what I've never done is to show you them all together and what that gives, because I think now that I'm putting all of the landscapes together, they're all going to be presented as part of the show, it's really nice just to see them together and to see what they bring. And just to say that the reason I do these as part of my portfolio of explorations on location is that by having the collage on first, it gives you another route into abstraction. And some of the elements of these Constantinas you'll see are more representative. And some of them, by having the papers and the inks, you just get that looser, more sort of impressionistic feel rather than a literal drawing or painting. And that's always what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use these studies to help me on my journey into a more abstract painting back in the studio. So that's what these really are about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera around now, and I'm going to try and hover over so you can see. Okay, so here they are. I'm sorry if you can hear some background noise. I'm doing this on a Saturday, which is relatively unusual for me to be videoing at this time. And there is an amateur dramatics group that meet in the mill that I am videoing in my next to my studio. So anyway, just so that you know what that is. So here they all are out on the table, and what I really like about looking at them in this way is that you get snippets. It's almost like the same thing that you get when you do the booklets and you fold them. You just get snippets of the landscape, which helps in terms of the abstraction, and it gives you these little views which are really nice, which weren't necessarily part of the original work that kind of happens. So I'm going to just go along them and try and keep it steady if I can. So these first two at the front, let me just pull back so that you can see them both. These first two side by side are the Moors ones, and these two were all done on location with mixed media, so they weren't done with collage. But what I have found really helpful of these is that quite a few of the pages really help me in terms of understanding my feelings and that feeling of being, for example, amongst the heather, and the way that the lines and the patterns work in the heather. I can see some of these in my paintings now, which is really interesting. So that process and then seeing them in this way has really helped with the extraction. And then if I walk along, you can see that it gets much darker, and some of my scratchy lines that you'll be very familiar with. And then as I go along, this now gets into the winter moors. Excuse me whilst I just go above it a little bit, whilst I move around this column, which is in the middle of my studio. So here we have it, the winter moors and the snow-topped fields. And that work was done with a combination of inks and the indigo pastel, which comes from Wallacima, which you probably are familiar with. Anyway, so that's that one. Let me now go to the second row, which is all about the woodland. And hopefully by just kind of giving you these snippets, you get a real sense of the spaces and the place. And one of the things that was very important to me, sorry, you're seeing now the background of the other one, which is confusing the issue. Let me just move down so I can show you properly. This one was done early in spring, well in April, and the things that were really notable to me was the lime green swathes, the twiggy branches that seemed to be much more dominant because you could see them, because the lime green was almost highlighting them, but there wasn't the mass of leaves that was hiding everything and the twigginess. And then there was these wonderful spaces and a feel of openness and a feel of breathing space, as well as all of the branches and the lines. So interestingly, those things came out in the combination of my studies, but I think you can see them in this concertina here, and it's heavily collaged, and I edited heavily to get a white space back, and I used all manner of papers, and most of them were either handmade or handwritten. And the blue that you see is a combination of gouache and some Posca markers. So that's the spring. And then in contrast, you have this one. Let me just move so I can go, which is the Autumn Woodland. Much richer colours, a feel of much more headiness and things going on. Obviously it's the end of the season as opposed to the beginning of the season, and all of the shapes and the twigs and the branches, it's kind of the collaging has enabled me to exaggerate some of that and to combine those different marks and lines of the trees and the branches and the ground plane, and it's kind of just given this kind of heady richness. The kind of combination of pattern and line and colour is more rich. So hopefully you can see that. And let me just jump to the last row and go down again so you can see. And this is the Edgelands. Now these Edgelands, or if you've been watching me for a while, you'll be very familiar with my interest in Edgelands, which are these wonderful stone walls that we have in this part of the country that form the field boundaries and the path boundaries. And the stone walls combine with all sorts of things. They have barbed wire and posts and plants, and all of it kind of forms this sort of tangled mess. And I'm really interested in the way those edgelands form and how they are sitting in the landscape. And then the final concertina is this one here, and it's the Panoramic View. and I looked in all different directions. Again, it's got lots of collage on inks. I've again edited quite heavily, and I was after trying to get that sinuous ribbon of the landscape in front of me, as well as the lines and textures. So I was asking a lot of this concertina, but I think it's actually really been a very helpful one, because again, it's those cropped images and those marks that keep coming up time and time again. And the collage really helps as well, because it gives you those patterns and it helps you with those, the kind of form really as well of that landscape. And I really enjoyed using, for example, the sewing patterns, because they again enabled, you can see there, the kind of semi-abstract type of impression. So there we have it. One of the things I wanted to mention to you was that I think I said to you I shared it on social media in the week, and I asked people what they thought a group of concertinas should be called. And I got some great suggestions. You might well have made some suggestions too if you're following me. They include things like accordion of concertinas, salida of concertinas, a performance of concertinas, a fold of concertinas, a concerto, a chorus, a flutter, a squeeze, and a session of concertinas. So there we are. All of those different things, all of them quite interesting. Anyway, thanks very much for following along, and please do subscribe if you aren't already, and I'd love to hear your comments. And in the next couple of weeks leading up to the exhibition, I'll be sharing more of the progress. And thanks a lot. Bye-bye.